Hello, everyone. Welcome into Bite Size Steelers. My name is Simon Short. I will be your host through this Steelers journey for the 2023-24 season, here brought to you by Bite Size Sports. I really appreciate everybody listening. This is going to be a fun adventure between me and the Bite Size crew. Really happy to be on. Really thankful for the opportunity to come to you and talk Steelers. You can follow me on Twitter at Simon_Short. That is Simon_Short with 2 T's for all of my Steelers thoughts, takes. I will definitely be live tweeting games as much as possible, reacting to everything going on. I do host a couple other NFL podcasts I won't get into, but this is my first Steelers specific podcast, and I'm really excited to bring a lot of my Steelers, both fandom and just understanding of how the team works, but make it a little lighter, make it a little more fun, a little more for the fans where hey, I want to root for this team. I want to look at the positive ends. We'll focus on the negatives too when things aren't going well for sure. But hey, this is a podcast for people who either are fans of the Steelers or want to learn more about the Steelers. So hopefully we'll be able to do both sides without being too biased. I will say I'll shout out as many other Steelers content creators as I can whenever I utilize that information. A lot of the nitty-gritty stuff that I love to listen to, that I get the best information from, is from Steelers Depot. It's a great blog that's full-time Steelers, all Steelers, as much as you could get. Shout out Alex Gazora and Dave Bryan. Those guys are phenomenal. If you're a Steelers fan, you're getting Steelers content, you need to be getting it from them as well if you're not already. But I also take a wide lens view at the NFL. I cover all 32 teams in a variety of ways. So I'm really excited to bring the knowledge that I have on the Steelers, the fandom, the excitement I have on the Steelers, along with the wide lens view of the NFL as a whole. So let's get our first inaugural episode of Bite Size Steelers underway. Again, thank you so much. I'm so excited for this journey. So we're going to start off with just a reaction to the 53-man roster. It's already obviously been out. We've all tweeted about it. We've all thought about it and had our disagreements or our excitement over the 53-man roster. And again, it is September 5th as this is getting recorded. You're maybe listening just before the season kicks off. So this is probably as final as it's going to get. Maybe 1 or 2 last minute moves, especially when it comes to practice squad elevations. But let's focus on the 53-man roster. The 3 quarterbacks and 3 running backs picked should be no surprise to anybody. We have Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph at quarterback, at running back, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Anthony McFarland Jr. I think this is a good group. Mitch Trubisky is as solid as a number 2 as you can get. And by the way, I'm starting off with the backup quarterback, guys. This should just give you a little insight into what this is going to be as a podcast. But obviously, Kenny Pickett, year 2, first full year as a starter. We're very excited. He showed a lot of good things in the preseason, showed a lot of good things toward the tail end of last year in terms of being a gamer, being accurate, being able to move an offense. He showed a lot of big play capability in the preseason. We just hope to see a more confident and consistent Kenny Pickett here in year 2, which I think we'll get. We have somebody who is no longer in a quarterback competition, no longer getting used to and learning the NFL, an NFL team's playbook, how things are run, how to just be a professional. I think Kenny Pickett's going to be much more confident. I'm not predicting a leap into superstardom, a top 10, top 5 quarterback even, but average to slightly above average quarterback play. I think that's a jump we can get from Kenny Pickett because of other improvements from other parts of the offense that we'll talk about next. So let's get into wide receiver. The Steelers kept 6 receivers: Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson the second, Calvin Austin the third, Miles Boykin. No surprises there. Miles Boykin's a fantastic gunner coming in at number 5. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens are the starters. Those are outside guys. Those are the big play guys. I hope there is going to be, and I do expect a bounce back year from Deontay Johnson this season. And then you've got Allen Robinson the second, Calvin Austin the third, working the slot. We'll talk more about that later and why I think it's going to be important for the Steelers offense this year. But Gunnar Olszewski getting that number 6 spot. I did not think Gunnar was going to make this roster this season. A guy that was signed primarily to be a core special teamer, be this team's return man last season in 22-23 after Ray McLeod went to the Niners. And he lost his job, partway through the season. Couple fumbles, not a lot of big plays. He became the backup returner, and last year, the second, maybe at times first slot receiver on the depth chart. did not look like he is going to be did not look like he was going to hold that roster spot going into this season. Anthony McFarland Jr. is going to be the kick returner. Calvin Austin III is going to be the punt returner. And you got to think that there's a better use for a roster spot than your backup kick and punt returner, especially when, look, Calvin Austin III could probably return kicks. McFarland, I don't think has ever really had a lot of experience returning punts, but Deontay Johnson obviously has, could be a backup option. I get you don't want to put the guy in a bad position to get hurt, but I don't think Gunnar Olszewski as a backup returner and the third slot receiver on the depth chart was really a great use of that, call it 49th or 50th spot on the team. We'll see how things kind of shake out as the weeks go. Maybe this is just making sure McFarland and Calvin Austin, who have never been full-time NFL returners, can handle the first few weeks, and then we'll see what happens. But Gunnar Olszewski is on this team, and I like Gunnar. He's fine. I think you can at least put him back there as a returner. I think he could probably provide some value in some other special teams aspects, punt coverage, kick coverage, things like that. I think we've seen him actually play gunner at some point last season. And, I like his 1-2. I like his blocking. I think he has some potential in terms of jet sweeps and stuff. But again, offensively, he's just not. He's a poor man's Calvin Austin III, and that's without the deep play capability that we saw from Calvin in the preseason. So I didn't love this gunner spot. We'll talk about tight end next, where I think we're missing a guy that I do wish had gunner spot instead. We have Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, and Connor Hayward as your tight end, fullback, H-back type player. And this is a good group. This is a group that I expect to make some big plays this season. We saw Freiermuth with a 22-yard touchdown reception in one of the preseason games. I'm pretty sure it was the yardage on that. I expect Pat to be working out of the slot a fair amount as well this year, thanks to the draft pick of Darnell Washington. I expect to see a lot of 12 personnel. I expect to see Darnell blocking a lot, which will be fantastic. I'm really, really excited about that. Connor Hayward as the number 3 do-it-all guy. We saw him take some handoffs in the preseason, something he did in college before Kenneth Walker transferred to Connor's school. And we have seen Connor make a number of great catches, both up the seam and in the flat. I think we can see Hayward get utilized more and more as the season goes. The guy that is not here that I expected to be here is Zach Gentry. If you want to break down your numbers and say, why would you keep 4 tight ends? Well, I view Gentry as a true tight end, and Connor Hayward, there's not a fullback on the team this year. No Derek Watt. You plug Hayward, if you want to have a nice, tidy, neat roster as your 4th running back being a fullback, I would have liked that better, because I don't want to see Hayward out there in 13 personnel blocking all that much. He'll do it, I'm sure. They'll use some split zone stuff where he's coming back the other direction. But I would have rather have seen Gentry for a team that wants to be physical, wants to run the ball. And if you're bringing in Darnell Washington to try and open up Pat Freiermuth a bit, if Washington goes down, they don't have a guy who is going to replace what Gentry could do as a blocker, and just with that sheer size. He's not the best blocker, not the best athlete or best tight end, but that sheer size of a 6'8", 50 to 60 pound tight end there on the end of the line of scrimmage, I thought was really, really key for the Steelers. But maybe some of this versatility, size, and flexibility they have on the offensive line will help with that. The starters are going to be Dan Moore Jr. The Steelers kept 9, by the way, here. Starters are going to be Dan Moore Jr., Isaac Seumalo, Mason Cole, James Daniels, and Chukwuma Okorafor from left to right. First round pick Broderick Jones is going to be your backup left tackle. I expect Dan Moore Jr. to essentially be the team's backup right tackle. I think the way this offensive line works, and we'll talk about it, is something the Steelers haven't generally done. Again, shout out to Steelers Depot for this. This team likes to have its roles pretty well defined. You have your starters, you have your true swing tackle backing up either left or right side, you have a swing guard, you have a true backup center. They're going to rely on the flexibility of these backups a lot this season and move guys around. Something that I think the best lines in the league are able to do. In-game adjustments, tackles moving from left to right, centers moving out to guard. So your true next best interior offensive lineman, maybe being a center, can come in. You're not taking a downgrade, putting a lesser player in who maybe just because it's a more straight line, more one-for-one positional fit. So I would expect Broderick Jones to come in, play left tackle should Chukwuma Okorafor get hurt, or Dan Moore Jr. And Dan Moore Jr. we could see move to the right side if Okorafor is out, excuse me. Backup center, Nate Herbig is who I would consider the 7th offensive lineman on this team. And I expect him to also be the first guard off the bench. So if Sayamalu, Cole, or Daniels ever go out, I expect Herbig to be the first man up. And then I expect Spencer Anderson to be number 8, a guy that played all 5 positions in training camp, played left guard through right tackle in the preseason at various points. A guy who was drafted in the 7th round out of Maryland for his flexibility, a guy I'm very excited about. I love the flexibility from an offensive lineman. So this is a situation where we could see, let's say, knock on wood, Isaac Sayamalu gets hurt. Nate Herbig comes in at left guard. Then let's say Mason Cole gets hurt. We see Herbig move to center and Spencer Anderson go in at left guard, for example. And then number 9 is Dylan Cook, the converted college quarterback to offensive lineman. I expect him to be the inactive offensive lineman on the roster, but a guy that played 3 positions in the preseason as well, some flexibility and some real upside, some real potential. So we'll see between Anderson and Cook and obviously Broderick Jones, Dan Moore getting some right tackle reps. Looking long term, how long is a core 4 going to last on this roster? I think a core 4 is fine, but I think you have maybe some more potential upside with Dan Moore moving there, just the athleticism and some of the things Dan Moore has shown so far. Definitely a jump from year 1 to year 2 for him. Going to the defensive side of the ball, starting on the defensive line, the Steelers kept 7 players here. Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, Montravius Adams, Keanu Benton, DeMarvin Leal, Isaiah Loudermilk, and Armand Watts. Montravius Adams can be the starting nose tackle. Larry Ogunjobi starting across from Cam Hayward as long as he is healthy. Keanu Benton, backup nose. Leal, Loudermilk, and Watts, your backup ends, with Loudermilk or Watts likely being inactive each week. Braden Fehoko was a guy that I thought would make this roster. I thought Loudermilk and Watts were going to be 2 dogs, 1 bone as the 4th quote unquote defensive end in this 3-4 scheme, with Fehoko being a 3rd nose tackle on the roster, which sounds heavy, sounds like a lot. But again, similar to the offensive side of the ball and Zach Gentry, this team wants to make sure they're sound in the running game on both sides of the ball. It's key for AFC North matchups, right? You can see the Ravens games, the Browns games, the Bengals games, where you want to be sound and strong up the middle. I thought Fehoko was going to make this roster as a 3rd nose tackle because the top 2 nose tackles have a little bit of flexibility. When this team goes in nickel, Adams and Benton, I think, can both be your rush defensive tackles behind Hayward and Ogunjobi, and even DeMarvin Leal, right? If those are your 4th and 5th guys, I think both can serve in that role well, making Watts and Loudermilk a little more expendable. Whereas nobody really does what Fehoko does in terms of being a big plugger, right? Adams uses his athleticism and size well. Benton, we think, has a lot of potential in that regard, but Fehoko is just a big run plugging dude. I thought that would have been a good fit for this team to have kept on the 53. Now Fehoko is on the practice squad, so maybe in those key AFC North matchups or other key matchups against good running teams, we see Fehoko get a couple elevations. Maybe we see him called up full time at some point. But I'm happy Fehoko at least made it back to the practice squad. I thought he would have been on the 53. At off-ball linebacker, Steelers keep 4, which is also a bit of a surprise. Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, Quan Alexander, Mark Robinson. No surprises there, but no Tanner Muse or Nick Kwiatkowski. Muse was regarded as a high-level special teamer. He was in the first wave of cuts, so I don't know if the Steelers thought he might circle back around, but he was claimed by the Chargers. And Nick Kwiatkowski, coming from a couple different teams, okay special teamer, not as good as Muse, but I thought a better defensive player. That first preseason game where Kwiatkowski actually got hurt his shoulder, missed the second preseason game. I thought he had a better game than Muse. Muse missed a couple tackles and Kwiatkowski had a blow up of a play in the backfield. So I thought he might have actually had a better chance, especially once Muse got cut. But both players no longer with the Steelers, only keeping 4. I'm excited to see what this group can do. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Edge rushers, Pittsburgh keeping 4 once again. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Marcus Golden, Nick Herbig. No surprises here. Biggest surprise is how awesome Nick Herbig looked. His get off was super, super good, which we expected going into the preseason, but I don't think I expected the amount of pass rush moves he also had. He had a great cross drop in a couple of those sacks and pressures that he created in the preseason. And I think that get off just stood out a little bit more than I expected and gave him a bigger advantage than I expected so far. It is just the preseason. We're not going to get too excited. He's going to be the number 4 on this team. Marcus Golden looked great as the number 3. But I think this is the deepest edge room that the Steelers have seen in a number of years for sure. Defensive backs going heavy. We have 11 DBs here. Let's start at what the Steelers are listing as true corners. That's Patrick Peterson, Levi Wallace, Joey Porter Jr., James Pierre, Desmond King, and Shannon Sullivan. Now that Desmond King obviously came through after the first initial 53 came in. Braden Mann, the punter, was released. Omar Khan couldn't work out a trade for him. Desmond King gets brought in. And this is what makes the DB room interesting. Those top 4 guys, no surprises. Peterson, Wallace, Porter Jr., those are going to be your main guys. James Pierre, decent number 4, outside corner, maybe decent's a little strong, but he is a good gunner on special teams. Him and Boykin is a good pairing. That's why those guys make the roster. King, I think, is going to maybe be the best nickel on the team and maybe an obvious passing down situations, 3rd and longs. Patrick Peterson gets more of that work, but I think King is going to play over Sullivan and Elijah Riley, who we'll talk about here in a second, in most rundown and maybe just in general down situations. Safeties, this team is keeping 5, Minkah Fitzpatrick, DeMonte Casey, Keanu Neal, Miles Killebrew, and Elijah Riley. Now, for all of preseason, Riley and Sullivan were getting team 1 and team 2 nickel corner reps. And it seemed that Sullivan maybe making more plays, slightly better in passing situations than Riley, but Riley with that size and safety background, better in rundown situations, is also the better special teamer. Now, we still thought Sullivan was going to be inactive even if he made the roster because of Patrick Peterson playing some nickel like we expected. So Riley, 1st and 2nd down, run situations, playing the nickel, and passing down, 3rd down, Patrick Peterson playing the nickel. Desmond King coming in, it's kind of the Spider-Man meme. Desmond King, Shannon Sullivan, Elijah Riley. Well, what do you all do here? Patrick Peterson's here anyways. So I find this a little curious that they're all still here. But if I'm going to, play conspiracy theorist a little bit, Elijah Riley being listed as a safety, maybe the Steelers just see him more as a core special teamer along with Miles Killebrew, who's listed as a safety, but it's a guy you don't want to see play real defensive snaps. Now, Riley is a guy with a little more versatility, especially than Killebrew, can play free safety, can play nickel corner, probably play in the box a little bit with his size. I think he could wear a couple hats on defense as opposed to Killebrew. But maybe Riley being listed as a safety means, hey, he's more of a special teamer first, backup DB second, and then you've got Desmond King as your starting nickel, Patrick Peterson moving in, Shannon Sullivan as your inactive on game days. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Strong safety, DeMonte Casey and Keanu Neal, probably splitting a lot of snaps, similar thing. Neal, rundowns, he's the hard-hitting safety. DeMonte Casey, more pass downs, more of the playmaker, better in pass coverage. I think both guys are going to have decent roles, though, because I think both guys can do a mix of things. So it's just going to depend on what packages, downs, and distances that the Steelers assign for these two. And I think we'll see plenty of 3 safety sets as well with Minkah Fitzpatrick. I would love to see, similar to the offensive line, the versatility that these defensive backs bring this year. I do think it could be a cause for concern when it comes to communication. But once this team really gets going, and if that front is creating the pressure we expect, I think this could be a really, really good group. Led the league in interceptions last season. I forget if it was tied or not, but a group that I expect to create a lot of turnovers behind all pro safety Minkah Fitzpatrick. Let's see here. So again, surprises. We talked about him. Gunner over Gentry, Loudermilk, Watts, Fehoko, that battle, those 3 for 2 spots, and then the extra DB, right? That was where that extra linebacker spot would have come from. Had they not been bringing in Desmond King, had they released Sullivan or Riley at some point, Tanner Muse or Nick Kwiatkowski, I thought one of those 2 would have been back. We'll see if any changes get made as the season progresses. All right, let's get into some of the predictions here. Let's start with the offense, just what we can expect to see. I currently have them ranked right dead smack in the middle at 16th. They finished 18th in DVOA last season. But I will be honest, my prediction might be a little light. I might be trying to be a little conservative with that 16th best offense and I do this by DVOA typically, just a good measure of efficiency, taking into account explosive plays, things like that. I think the Steelers are going to need to show the explosiveness they showed in the preseason in regular season action for me to feel like this can really be a above average offense and really kind of crack the top 12 to 10 of this NFL of the NFL this season. But I think there is an outside chance that they could do that. Um, this team knows its identity. They have a healthy Najee Harris right now. Remember last year, he was not healthy for the first 5, 6 weeks of the season, dealing with a Liz Frank injury from, I think it was like the first practice. He gets stepped on by an offensive lineman on his foot and really started out the season slow, as did the whole offense while it was going through the Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett rigmarole. There's going to be better offensive line play. Isaac Seumalo instead of Kevin Dotson. Year 2 for Mason Cole. Year 3 for Dan Moore. Year 2 for James Daniels in this offense. So I think overall this run game is going to be maybe the run game is top 10, especially when you consider short yardage, goal line situations. This was one of the best short yardage run teams in the NFL last season. I think it can do that again. And if they can add some more explosive plays between the things that Isaac Seumalo kind of unlocks for them, the Jalen Warren 64-yard touchdown run in the preseason is a perfect example of what high-level guards Seumalo and Daniels can do. And when everybody's clicking on that offensive line, if they stay healthy again this season, I think this can be a great running game. And then offensively, if they can create that explosiveness, I think that's going to really help. Calvin Austin III and Allen Robinson II should really add to that element in terms of explosive plays in the slot. I guess Calvin Austin a little more in terms of explosiveness. We saw what he was able to do both in the punt game and offensively in preseason. Get a slot receiver that can really make plays. A guy that on jet sweeps, it's not just like a fun mix for 8 yards. It's something that can break for 30, 40, an explosive run, or a guy that can work deep. Allen Robinson, not explosive plays out of the slot, but I think he can make the offense more efficient from the slot, a la what Juju Smith-Schuster did in 2020 and 2021, just in terms of finding the open zones, working in over the middle, getting the tough yards, getting the first downs, really helping that third down conversion rate, especially in third and shorts and third and mediums. That was something the Steelers didn't have last year. They tried Chase Claypool. He wasn't a good fit for the slot. And once they traded him, pretty much with the gunner, who is, again, nice effort guy, decent blocker for his size, but not going to really move the needle, help you out offensively. I think Allen Robinson can do a lot of what Juju did. And while what Juju did in his last 2 years with Pittsburgh wasn't exciting, it had its benefits. It had its place, its importance in the offense. And I think we can get that. We can see that as fans again from Allen Robinson, while also getting the explosiveness from the slot from Calvin Austin III. That all goes along with, hey, we expect a touchdown regression and just general better play from Deontay Johnson this season. And hopefully huge jump here in year 2 for George Pickens. I've been trying to stay calm on George Pickens, everybody, throughout this preseason. It's very difficult to. I think he could have a monster season this year, especially if Kenny Pickett is willing and able to push the ball downfield, which it looks like he is at least a little more this year than last year. Darnell Washington, in terms of personnel, I think is also going to help unlock the running game with more 12 personnel usage, but also unlock Pat Freiermuth as well. I talked about Austin and Robinson in the slot. How about getting Pat Freiermuth in there a little bit more often? You want to run 11 personnel, put Darnell Washington on the line, move Freiermuth out to the slot. This team has so many options, so much more versatility this year than last year in a number of positions, I think. I think this team could get to the top 12 in terms of offense if the running game is as efficient as I think it's going to be, can get more explosive plays than it did last season, and if the passing game in general can just be a little bit more modern, a little bit more nuanced. This could get to top 12 because I think other teams that were ahead of the Steelers last year in DVOA offensively, specifically in the top 12, teams like the 49ers, Falcons, and Ravens, I think they could finish lower than expected. And I think we could see some regression from teams like the Giants and Dolphins, who had much better years last year than they had in previous seasons. Obviously, there's a ton of factors that go into all of those teams. The Niners and Brock Purdy for a full season, or maybe moving to Sam Darnold. The Falcons going to Desmond Ridder, adding Bijan Robinson. The Ravens, Todd Monken, and their new offense. We'll talk a lot about that as the season goes. The Giants, okay, everyone knows what they want to do now. Is there another layer to Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll? The Dolphins, can Tua stay healthy? And what's their next layer of what they can add to this offense? There's a world, right? There's a world where the Steelers can get to top 12. Right now, I have them at 16th on offense. I think that should be the minimum goal, be a top half of the team offensively and or top half of the league offensively. And then how much further than that can you get? Defensively is pretty simple. There should be a team that's back in the top 3 to 5 this year. No more excuses. In 2021, out of nowhere, inexplicably could not defend the run anymore. That was where we see Montravius Adams join the team halfway through the season, and it got a little bit better. And then in 2022, TJ Watt only plays in 10 games. This team finishes 12th best defense by DVOA. There can't be any more excuses this year. Obviously, if Watt's hurt again, or Minka gets, or anybody gets hurt, right? Injuries notwithstanding, this team has too much talent, too much invested in this defense, both draft picks and financially, to not be a top 5 defense this year. I think I currently have them as my 3rd ranked defense going into the season. It's also, as I said before in the roster breakdowns, the deepest it's been in years, especially up front. There's so many options on the defensive line for real edge rushers you can see playing real snaps this year. And then I like the combo of the linebackers, Cole Holcomb, Atlanta Roberts, Quan Alexander, and even Mark Robinson, what he can do here too. But, last year, Devin Bush, listen, Steelers fans, we know what the Devin Bush experience was. Robert Spillane was asked to do way too much for his skill set the whole time he was in Pittsburgh, really, except for 2020, that first year he came on. And then the Miles Jack experiment just he was not healthy for most of the year last year. He ended up retiring this year after being in training camp with the Eagles for a couple weeks. It was not a good group. It's good to see it kind of rejuvenated. I would have liked to have seen a high draft pick this year go to it. We all wanted Jack Campbell for sure as Steelers fans, but I think this could be an interesting group. Cole Holcomb is kind of the leader in the clubhouse, got the biggest contract. He's going to wear the green dot. He's probably going to be in almost all packages, but we could see, I think, Quan Alexander be a dime backer at times over Cole Holcomb. He showed a lot in the preseason, coming on a little later in training camp. And Atlanta Roberts is just a wrecking ball. Think Vince Williams, think Atlanta Roberts. How vastly will the defense back room affect communication and coverage? I mentioned that earlier with the roster breakdown. Terrell Edmonds, for all of whatever faults you want to apply to him, was a solid player who played for this defense for a long time, played next to Minka for a long time, and generally didn't give up gigantic plays unless you were asking him to play man coverage on a Travis Kelce or a really good wide receiver. You're going from that to DeMonte Casey and Keanu Neal. So you're not only replacing your starting strong safety with a person that hasn't been on the team as long, but you're trying to make one player into 2. Terrell Edmonds played a lot of football for the Steelers, a lot of snaps, a lot of games, and you're kind of splitting that amongst 2 guys. There's going to be some communication errors with that, I think. And then Cameron Sutton at cornerback. I mean, he just filled in so many gaps for this team for so long. And now you're splitting that between Patrick Peterson, Joey Porter Jr. coming in. Okay, what's Desmond King? What are Sullivan and Riley? There's just a lot of turnover. Joey Porter Jr., a rookie, high draft pick, the pedigree, the connection to the team, the skill set, the attributes we love. And I think we as fans are really excited for. I like Joey Porter Jr. coming out. To get him at 32 was a steal. I think he's going to be a good starting cornerback, but he's going to be a rookie cornerback that wasn't a top 10 type talent like a Patrick Surtain or a Sauce Gardner. So there's going to be some growing pains, and I think they're going to bring him along slowly. But, what kind of coverage bust, especially early in the season, are we going to get from that? That's the one thing I'm concerned about when it comes to the defense backs overall. And yeah, we'll see what the linebackers can be. Can they be more consistent, or are we going to have another kind of round of, oh no, here we go again with these vet linebackers that the Steelers keep signing? So those are my predictions for both sides of the ball. I think an above average offense, I think an elite defense should get this team to a pretty good record. let's go week by week and just look at the schedule. We'll try to attribute wins and losses as we go, but we're not going to hold too true to these specific wins and losses. What my expectations are for the Steelers this year, minimum goals, you have to, I think, win 10 games and make the playoffs, right? If you win 10 games and you miss the playoffs by like a tiebreaker, that's tough. It's a really, really strong AFC. There's going to be three teams that missed the playoffs in the AFC this year that maybe all could have been wild card teams in the NFC, right? Just based on the discrepancy in the conferences. But anything less than 10 wins, I think would be a disappointment for this team. And I think there is a stretch goal of, hey man, 11 wins and the Ravens are changing their offense and their defense doesn't look as strong right now as it stands this year. The Bengals, I know Joe Burrow started practicing last week, but are they going to get off to a slow start? They have some turnover on the offensive line. Obviously, their starting safeties are gone. So there's a realistic stretch goal for this team where everyone in the AFC North beats each other up so bad, and the Steelers can scrape 11 to 12 wins and have a tiebreaker and win the division. I think that is a goal they should absolutely be striving for. I don't think it's totally out of their own possibility. Now, if Joe Burrow walks in week one and is Joe Burrow and is completely healthy and is healthy all season, it's probably going to be tough to beat out the Bengals when it comes to a regular season win total. That offense is just so explosive. And even though the safeties are gone, so much carryover of that defense. Lou Anarumo is one of the best DCs in the league. If Burrow, it's a question of Burrow's health, right? There's a world where Burrow's soft tissue injuries can lag or nag all season. It can be hard to fully get over. And we could see the Bengals falter a little bit, 10 wins, 11 wins. And if things break right for the Steelers, and we're going to look at the schedule now, it's not a bad schedule, especially to start. We could see this team really go off. So let's go week by week here. Week one, the 49ers, with all the turnover that the 49ers have, the ascension the Steelers seem to be on, I'm expecting that to be a win. Nick Bosa, it's seeming more and more likely he misses that game as well. So no D'Amico Ryans for this defense, no Jimmy Ward, no Nick Bosa potentially. A lot of change for this group. I think week one, the Steelers being on the rise, we could see a win for the Steelers. Week two versus the Browns. Truthfully, I don't expect the Browns to be very good this season. They finished with 7 wins last year, going to Deshaun Watson full time, who was really bad last season. Obviously, we have to see what he will be. But this defense also was not good last year. They obviously added great pieces, Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson. They did some stuff that should help them, at least on paper. Jim Schwartz coming in at defensive coordinator. I do like that hire. I like the moves they made for this defense. Is it going to jump them into above average? I don't think so, but they're hoping the biggest leap happens on the offensive side of the ball, right? They're hoping to be a top 12 offense and let's say a top 18 defense, right? And what can that get them? I don't think either jump is going to be as strong as they kind of hope for. I see this as maybe a average offense. Again, this based on what we saw from Watson last season and his play at quarterback. This might be an average offense and a slightly below average defense. So I have a win against the Browns. Week 3 and week 4 at Raiders, at Texans. If the Steelers want to be a serious team, really try to win this division and make the playoffs, those both have to be wins. Steelers fans, you don't need me to remind you, games in the recent years against the Raiders that should be wins have been losses. So I have that as a win, but with an asterisk, because if you tell me one of these 4 games there has to be a loss, that's the one that I'm going to guess it happens in, just because Steelers seem to drop a silly one early in the year pretty often. And it really feels like these last 3 years, it's always been the Raiders. Week 5 versus the Ravens, I do have a loss there. I think this team splits with the Ravens. That's pretty consistent for this rivalry. And I would personally rather it be here in week 5 than in week 18. So spoiler alert for week 18. But I have this team at 4-1 going into their bye week at week 6. Week 7 at Rams. This should be a win. I don't care that they have to go to LA. It's off a bye week. It's in my scenario here, off a loss. The Rams, but who knows what Cooper Kupp's injury is going to look like? Who knows what Matt Stafford's health is going to look like by then? Who knows what all those young rookie defenders around Aaron Donald are going to look like? So I have a win there for the Rams. Week 8 versus the Jaguars, I have a loss. I think the Jaguars are going to be a top 5-ish offense in the NFL this season. I don't think their defense can be too much better, but on the road, super explosive offense, still fairly early in the season. I have a loss there. Week 9 versus the Titans, I have a win. The Titans are tough, though. These two teams are cut from the same cloth. This is going to be a tough battle. I think this is a Thursday night game. I have a win here, but this was my other asterisk because I have it right at the start of another 3-win streak. And if you tell me there needed to be a loss mixed in there, I feel like it would be the Titans. But again, coming off of a loss to Jacksonville, back-to-back home games, I don't see this team losing 2 home games in a row here, week 8, week 9. So I have a win against the Titans, and we don't know what their quarterback situation might be by then. They could be trying something else. I don't expect it. I expect Tannehill to be the guy for a majority of the season, and I expect the Titans to have a good defense. Two teams cut from the same cloth. Going to be a muddy game, ugly game. Thursday night football. It's going to be a great one, but I have a win for the Steelers there. Week 10 versus the Packers. A young Jordan Love, a young offense overall. I think the Steelers can get the dub there again, especially because it's in Pittsburgh. 3 home games in a row. You got to win at least 2. I think they get those 2 there against the Titans and Packers. Week 11 at the Browns, win. I already talked about the Browns. Week 12 at the Bengals. I'm going to go loss. I wish that the Steelers had a Bengals game earlier in the year. I expect this team to do the right thing by Joe Burrow and get him healthy by this point of the year. So I'm going to have a loss at Cincinnati here against the Bengals and Joe Burrow. I expect it to be a good one, though. Week 13 versus the Cardinals, I have a win. We'll see if our former backup quarterback Josh Dobbs is still the starter by then. Week 14 versus the Patriots. Again, similar to the Titans, similar built team, elite defense. I don't think as good an offense as Pittsburgh, but going to be a much better situation with Bill O'Brien at OC than Matt Patricia last year. But I don't think the talent on the Patriots offense is going to be enough. But I do think the Steelers offense will get get the better of them. But I need to work a few more losses in. So I'm going to say by week 14, Mac Jones is really humming, got his confidence back. The receivers are in a better place. Tyquan Thornton might be healthy by then. And 2 elite defenses, and I'll give the edge to the Patriots, even at home for the Steelers, just to work in another loss here. Week 15 at the Colts, that should be a win. I love Anthony Richardson. I think he is going to be the offensive rookie of the year, but this team as a whole is just a mess. No Jonathan Taylor. Maybe by this time he's playing. Probably is, but we'll see. Really young defense, but I have a win against the Colts here, week 15. Week 16 versus the Bengals, I have a loss again. Again, Joe Burrow, unless they've sewn up the division at this point or high playoff seeding, I think this is a loss here. Week 17, Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are really, really good. I think they could win their division. I'm predicting them to win their division. I have another loss there. Week 18, Ravens win. End of the year, Ravens, you've already lost. I think that's a win for the Steelers. So that's 11 wins, guys. And I know some of those losses feel kind of icky as a Steelers fan. An early one to the Ravens, the 2 both to the Bengals, and then you're like, man, the Patriots and the Seahawks and the Jags. But listen, this team is going to win every game that they're favored in. And all of these teams are going to look so much different, even by week 5, right before the bye week for the Steelers, than what we expect right now. This is just loosely how I kind of see it shaking out. 11 wins. My official prediction for the Steelers is probably 10 wins, a 10-7 team, making the playoffs. I think they can overtake the Ravens for a wild card spot, overtake a team like the Dolphins for a wild card spot. I think the other wild card teams that I'm officially predicting are the Jets and the Chargers, with the Chiefs, Bills, Jaguars, and Bengals as division winners. But I think this team, the minimum goal should be 10 wins and should be a playoff berth. And I think that happens. And then beyond that, would really like a playoff win. Haven't had that since 2016. And even a step beyond that would be win the division. And hey, if they can steal one of those 2 Bengals games and maybe they don't drop let's say the Patriots game, I mean, that's 13 right there. And what I had worked in those 11 wins that I listed, to get to my 10 that I'm officially predicting, I'm working in either that Titans win, flip that to a loss, or that Raiders win, just for your silly early season blunder, mark that as a loss, even though I think the Raiders are going to be a bottom 3 to 4 team in the NFL this season. So that would be really tough. But that's where we're at for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, I think above average offense, elite defense. It's a very good roster, I think, all the way around. Oh, I never even said specialist. Chris Boswell, Presley Harvin, Christian Kuntz, chalk from last season. Sorry, specialist. I'm expecting 10 wins. I could see 11. There's a world where there's 12, but I'm more 10 wins is my official prediction for this team. Should be in the playoffs and should be a lot of fun to watch this offense kind of figure itself out here in year 2 of this new regime and see this defense hopefully be back to elite status. All right, everybody, that's it for me. Again, this is Simon Short of Bite Size Steelers. Make sure you're checking out all of our Bite Size NFL team podcasts. Make sure you're checking out Bite Size Sports. You can follow me on Twitter at Simon_Short. We will be back later in the week with an official week 1 preview. So make sure you are subscribed to the feed, following me on Twitter to get all your updates on that. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Talk to you next time.